أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله والحمد حقه كما يستحقه حمدا كثيرا. وأعوذ به من شر نفسي إن النفس لأمارة بالسوء إلا ما رحم ربي. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المطهرين المكرمين. السلام عليك سيدي ومولاي يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت، وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. قال الله العظيم في كتابه الكريم وهو أحسن القائلين وأصدق الصادقين: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ومن أراد الآخرة وسعى لها سعيها وهو مؤمن فأولئك كان سعيهم مشكورا. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the purification of the souls, the enlightenment of the hearts, for the hastening of the reappearance of the awaited Savior, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, enlighten your souls and the atmosphere with the recitation of salawat upon Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Salamun Alaikum wa Rahmatullahi Ta'ala wa Barakatuh. It is deemed to be one of the greatest strengths of the human being, an ability that, if strengthened, will give rise to success. It is a quality that all believers should seek to obtain the pleasure of God and achieve the objective of this creation. Willpower, or the ability to self-control, is one of the features of the human being that many focus upon when it comes to their lives. They consider that in order to achieve what they set out to in their lives, in order to get to their goals and their destinations, they need to have strong willpower. They need to have the determination. They need to have the commitment. They need to have the strength to be able to reach that which they desire to reach. Whether it was the prophets, whether it's sportsmen and women, whether it's politicians, whether it's businessmen and women, anybody out there who considers themselves to have been successful in life will undoubtedly have had strong willpower. And it is recognized that is something that people look to attain in their lives in every shape and form. Sometimes we feel a sense of desperation to have a strong will, yes? Because we are told will is power, no doubt, in achieving whatever we wish to achieve. How many times you and I have been in situations where we wish we had strong willpower to resist the temptation and to say no, and indeed to go about that which we should go about. For example, for those who are seeking to give up bad habits, for those who have made certain commitments, because you look at, for example, New Year's resolutions, that is where many people set out their agendas for the coming year. And it is where they test their willpower. According to ABC News, only 9% of the Australian population who have New Year's resolutions stick to them. Indeed, this similar statistics exist for the United States, 8%. 8% only are able to keep up with this. Why? Because many a times there is an overestimation of our strengths and our weaknesses. Sometimes we are under illusion as far as what we can in reality achieve. Therefore, this subject is very important to you and I. How many times we've been in instances, for example, there is a clip or a movie or something that comes up on television that we know we're not supposed to look at, but sadly we cannot resist and we view it. Sometimes, for example, we are sitting with a group of people and all of a sudden somebody whom we dislike, their name is mentioned, and there is the urge to dissect them and to speak ill of them. We what? We know it's wrong, but we can't control ourselves, and we divulge and enter into this particular discussion. And many other examples. Each and every one of us perhaps has an instance in their lives or many others that they can present. The question is, of course, that willpower is what? Is of great importance in the life of a human being. And that's why there is a statement that says what? When there is a will, there is what? Family. No, not really. When there is a will, there is a way. Yes? In the idea that we and I can achieve greatness if we strengthen that self-control, that determination within us. That's why it is said that once there was a father who used to enjoy gardening with his son. On an annual basis, they would dig the garden every year and they would plant new crops, new, for example, fruits in their back garden. One of the years, his son was arrested and imprisoned for a crime. Therefore, he felt saddened. There's no one to help him dig the garden this year. He wrote a letter to his son. I miss you this year. There is no one to help me in my garden. Yes, dig it. He responded, his son responded from the prison with a letter to his father. He said, my dear father, I'm so sorry I'm not with you, but I just want to give you this secret. Please don't dig the garden because I've hidden a few weapons in the garden. So don't dig it this year. The police, of course, read this letter. They come to the house and they order that the garden is dug. When the garden is dug, they don't find anything. The father responds back to the son and says, son, they didn't find anything. The son responds back, you're very welcome. In the idea that if there is a will, there is a way, no doubt, yes, that you and I are able to achieve greatness. When we look at the whole subject, there is a need for us to understand and appreciate that it is an objective of the human being to excel in life and to look to improve themselves. And without this emphasis, this idea does not necessarily materialize. That's why we don't need to discuss why we should strengthen our self-control, why we should seek to somehow enhance our willpower. It is something of a foregone conclusion for you and I. And indeed, scientists and behavioral experts have conducted experiments to show the benefits of having a stronger will. For example, there is a psychologist, behavioral psychologist by the name of Walter Mischel. In the 1960s, he conducted a very interesting experiment. He brought a few 4-year-old children and he placed them in the room, and it was known as the marshmallow test. What did he do? He said to the 4-year-olds, each you have one marshmallow, yes? You can eat it whenever you want. But if you wait for 15 minutes and you don't eat this marshmallow, we'll give you another marshmallow. Yes? What happened was that, of course, some of the children waited and some consumed the sweet. He later on, 40 years later, would you believe, went back and reconnected with those children when they were what? Later as adults. And he studied their lives, yes? This is, of course, one of many experiments perhaps that he conducted. He came with the conclusion that the children who did not have the will to resist eating that marshmallow, later on in life had a number of behavioral problems. They suffered with stress, for example, yes? They had a number of psychological issues, whereas those who had a stronger will were seemingly more happy. They were seemingly what? More successful in their lives. Therefore, the conclusion that is presented is that this idea is beneficial for the human being. In the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses willpower. What is the Arabic word for will? Al-irada. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَمَنْ أَرَادَ الْآخِرَةِ وَسَعَى لَهَا سَعْيَهَا. Allah says, whomsoever has the willpower to seek akhirah and to work for it, وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ, as well as the fact that they are believers, فَأُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ سَعْيُهُمْ مَشْكُورًا. Allah will be grateful to them, so to speak. In other words, they will attain the reward of the Almighty subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, the Quran gives us beautiful examples of prophets who had strong will. Yes, they had strong self-control and determination. Like whom? For example, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. Yes, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam was an individual who brought his family, his wife Hajar and Ismail, to the barren desert of Mecca. Allah said to him, you must leave them there. Ibrahim did not dispute, yes? Ibrahim did not say, how are they going to live? What about water? What about food? Yes? His determination was very strong, yes? Similarly, his wife Hajar would be also of an individual who had that particular determination. In which way? You find that she would be in that difficult situation, yet she would not necessarily lose hope. Similarly, later on, when Allah commanded Ibrahim to slaughter his son Ismail, both the father and the son would submit to Allah as well as the mother. When you look at Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, yes, his willpower was such that he stood firm against the temptations and the advances of the wife of the minister when it came to the palace. And of course the journey of being enslaved and so on and so forth. Our holy beloved Prophet, Al-Rasul Al-A'zam, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Undoubtedly is the greatest example of what? Of someone who had brilliant self-control and mastered the art of having a strong willpower. What do we mean? Look at the Prophet of Islam. When he was being given this challenge and when he was pressurized by Quraysh, what did he say? Wallah, لو وضعتم الشمس في يميني والقمر في شمالي. If you give me the sun on my right and the moon on my left, so that I abandon this mission, I will never do so until what? God decrees what should happen. Yes? The idea was that the determination was absolutely visible within the character and the personality of the Holy Prophet. No doubt, yes? You look at Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Muttaqeen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, peace and blessings be upon him. When it came to self-control, I tell you, when you reflect upon the day of Khandaq, the battle of the trench, in which most of us have come across, when he eventually struck Amr ibn Abdul Wudd al-Amiri, and that man fell, yes? In the heat of the battle, no one would have blamed him. No one would have criticized him. But that enemy of God spits in the face of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Amir al-Mu'mineen walks back and forth whilst everyone is waiting for Imam to finish this man off. But Ali doesn't. He waits to cool down. Then he does. And when asked, he said, I did not wish to kill him for my sake. I wanted to kill him for Allah. Can you imagine? That strength, what? To defeat any temptations or any desires from within. Yes? Therefore, when it comes to today's world and how you and I live, unfortunately, we have been bombarded by stimulants. Yes? We are people today who are being subjected to many desires out there. Yes? There is the iPhone, and there is the iPad, and there is the iMac, and there is the bigger thing, which is the I want. Everybody wants everything, yes? This consumer-led society that we live in, yes, everywhere, in many parts of the world, when it comes to this idea, everybody wants to what? Acquire, wants to have. There is that hunger to be able to possess things, no doubt. Similarly, we are being bombarded with temptations left, right, and center. And therefore, you see the rise of a number of challenges in the community, which requires our determination and us to examine and to look at tools to strengthen our will. For example, what? Unfortunately, the rise of the usage of drugs when it comes to either its usage or its supply. Yes, what do we find? It's a taboo subject. People don't like to speak about it. But sadly, we have today amongst our community, and not only this community, we have many other communities similarly, yes? Within the Shia world, we have people who are not only users of recreational substances and other dangerous drugs, such as cocaine and heroin and ecstasy, yes? But also individuals who are supplying it. Listen to this statistic, according to published by the government here in Australia, yes? You cannot get a more authentic authority, so to speak, here in this country to tell us about the problem of drugs in Australia. Do you know what it says? 2016 report. It says, when it comes to Australians, 43% of Australians in average in 2016 used an illicit drug. That's 8.5 million people. It is not a joke, yes? It is affecting many people, yes? Within our community and others, within society. It's creating many problems, many health problems, such as the weakening of the immune system, increasing of the heart attacks, yes? Leading possibly towards what? Towards the idea of abuse and overdose, which sadly results in death. Yes, we've already had cases of people passing away within our communities around the world, within the people of the followers of the school of Ahl al-Bayt, due to what? Due to overdose of drugs. These matters, although it's an addiction, it requires us what? To look at the roots, to look at how we can encounter these challenges and how do we build up that power within, that ability for us to be able to say no to temptations and desires. Therefore, I would like to examine the subject of willpower by looking at three questions or three areas. How is it defined, number one? And what is it related to as far as the humans? And number two, what kind of tips are presented out there in the modern world which have indeed built on Islamic recommendations on making ourselves stronger as far as will is concerned? And very crucially, which personality on the 10th of Muharram who stood to support Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam was a brilliant example of what? Of self-control, discipline, determination, and amazing willpower. And how can we learn from him and seek to follow in his footsteps and look at him as an exemplar for our lives today? As far as the definition of willpower is concerned, some have said willpower is the ability to do what we ought to be doing rather than what we want to be doing. Others have said no, it's the ability to leave aside short-term goals and center upon long-term objectives. In the recognition that many a times the human being will seek to satisfy and will look for quick fixes and gratifications immediately at the moment of the impulse or the need, and they may forget the bigger picture. Yes. Imagine this particular scenario in the idea that, for example, you've come back home, for those who are seeking, or you have a plan to lose weight. Just to give an example, you have a plan to lose weight, yes? And what happens? You've spent your day hard at work and you've had salad for lunch. You come back in the evening, you come back home, and the first thing you smell, what? Is the wonderful smell of something that is baking, yes? You go to the kitchen, you find that, for example, what has been presented out there is some delicious cookies, or some baklawa, yes? Or something that you really like. Yes. Immediately you look at that, you've had a very difficult day, you've had very little to eat or simple foods to eat. There is a great temptation there to be able to to consume that sweet dish, for example, yes? You know that you're not supposed to, but some of us just give in, yes? And then we feel so guilty afterwards. Not one, not two, not three, yes? We eat and then we feel a great sense of remorse that why did I do it? And then it's a cycle where we think, I lack willpower. I don't have the strength. I'm useless. And that brings the idea of failure into our minds, and it's a vicious cycle, yes? Therefore, what do we find? We find it is mentioned in the studies and within the presentations of those who are experts in the area. This is a very important point for us to recognize. They say willpower is a muscle within the human being. It is what? A muscle, but not a physical muscle. Because I know some of the brothers here immediately would have been excited by that realization. And they thought, I'll go to the gym, you know, mashallah, the biceps and everything. Yes, I will develop that muscle. No doubt, yes, it is a muscle which is mental. And when we find books such as that written by a professor known as Roy Baumeister, he has written a book entitled Willpower, Rediscovering the Greatest Human Strength. He, amongst many others, says that indeed willpower is a muscle which needs to be exercised, but it can also be depleted. Yes? It can also be weakened. Please pay attention to this. Yes? Because today, what do we find? Many a times when we want to do things in life, similar to the example of New Year resolutions, we have a list. We want to change many aspects in our lives. We are told that this willpower is limited in what it can do if we do not exercise it. And just like a proper muscle, if we go to the gym and we exercise our muscles by lifting weights and doing everything else, then what? It can be stretched and it can be stronger. And therefore, what the experiments have shown is indeed this. For example, in one particular experiment, what they did was they brought a group of people inside the room and they presented them on the table with what? With two separate food. One was very warm, hot, nice, delicious chocolate chip cookies, and on the other side, radish. Yes? Then they said to them, you are not to eat from the cookies. If you want to eat anything, eat from the radish. What they found was the people, after a while, some ate the cookies and some ate the radish. The next part of the experiment, what did they do? They gave all the participants a puzzle, which was quite difficult puzzle. They found that those who had eaten the chocolate chip cookies were able to solve the puzzle, whereas those who did not found it very difficult. Why? They concluded that as far as the will is concerned, it can only focus on one thing. They were focusing on not eating the chocolate chip cookies. Yes? So they found the puzzle quite difficult to achieve, to complete. Therefore, it is being mentioned and highlighted that this particular muscle, similar to normal physical muscles, requires exercise. requires stretching. Yes, no doubt this is a realization that has been presented, and one that gives us a good introduction into what should we be doing as far as enhancing our abilities out there to resist temptation. And where does this idea come from, that it's a muscle? Indeed, this is something that the religion of Islam 1400 years ago has presented. Yes, within the teachings, in which way we are told that the nafs, the soul, has a number of faculties. Please understand this, because one important step to be able to be a strong-willed individual is to know the nafs. Man arafa nafsah faqad arafa rabbah, no doubt. Whomsoever has cognizance and has deep understanding of their soul will be able to reach that level of understanding of their Lord. Therefore, we are told in Islamic teachings, and specifically within the akhlaq, so to speak, direction of the religion or the discipline, we are told the nafs is divided into several faculties, yes, or areas. One is the wahmiya, the imaginary side of the nafs. The other one is bahimiya, animalistic. The third is shahwa, desire. And the fourth is aql, intellect. Therefore, because there is these four, we are told when the faculty of the animalistic desires or just general desires in itself overpowers the intellect, human beings are driven towards whims. And we are told it is like an animal which is undomesticated and wild. For example, you've got this animal that has not been tamed, yes? And you're trying to ride this animal and it takes you to wherever it wants to. You can't control it. They give this example as a parable to how it is in the nafs, yes? Therefore, we are told it is like a dam when it comes to control of the river or the water flow. It is needed that the human being should be the one who tames and domesticates their soul, especially the dimension which is known as the animalistic dimension and part of their nafs. That is why Amir al-Mu'mineen wa Imam al-Muttaqeen Ali ibn Abi Talib, peace and blessings be upon him, what does he say beautifully in Nahj al-Balagha? He says, إِنَّمَا هِيَ نَفْسِي أُرَوِّضُهَا or أَرُوضُهَا بِالتَّقْوَى. He says, I know my soul, I need to exercise it, I need to stretch it, I need to control it, but I do so with taqwa. حَتَّى تَفْزَعَ عَنِ الْفَزَعِ الْأَكْبَرِ, so that it is shaken regarding the day of judgment. Yes? The Quran also, of course, comes forward and highlights this categorically. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَىٰ. Allah says, whomsoever wishes to desire that proximity to Allah, they must work against their souls. They must recognize the danger and the capacity of the soul to rebel and to be in control. Therefore, we are told an effective tool, first and foremost, is to understand the nafs and to be able to appreciate how we work within this particular sphere, that if we allow the nafs to get whatever it desires, it becomes overpowering and overwhelming. Why? Because the Quran says, إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ. The soul desires enjoyment. The soul desires fulfillment. The soul tends towards evil. That's how we've been hardwired. That's how we've been created. This is why when we stand in salah, in the prayer in the mosque, we are standing in an area known as mihrab. In Arabic, that comes from harb, which means we're in a battle. We're in a war. Yes? Amir al-Mu'mineen says what? That your soul is your what? Is your enemy. مَيْدَانُكُمُ الْأَوَّلْ أَنفُسَكُمْ. Your first battlefield is your soul. You and I must not be what? Must not be heedless of this realization. It is what? Combat with the soul that we need to develop in our lives. Therefore, the question that has been presented and you and I will ask is, very well, I understand this introduction. I want to find out, however, how do I pick on this in order to be able to be what? More self-controlling in my life. More the ability that when I'm faced with temptations to turn away and say no. A stronger human being, because I recognize that that is the path of the prophets and the imams. I recognize that that is how a believer should be when it comes to what? The teachings of the Holy Quran. And I recognize above all that that is the secret towards success, no doubt, in this world and akhirah. The most emphatic and important step for every human being to undertake in order to strengthen their irada is, number one, connection with the divine. Is that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is that beseeching of the Almighty to help, number one. Number two, to appreciate that we are weak. Allah says in the Quran, وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. The human being is weak. Yes, number one. Number two, given that the human being is weak, to appreciate there are external factors such as the shaitan which seek to derail the human being at every single opportunity. Yes? That we must recognize. And number three, not to be dejected by it and to be despondent, but to remember. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, أَتَزْعَمُ أَنَّكَ جُرْمٌ صَغِيرٌ وَفِيكَ انْطَوَى الْعَالَمُ الْأَكْبَرُ. Do you think you're a small creation of God and Allah has made everything revolve around you? The Quran says we have given you everything that you need to excel in this world. We have provided you with the air, we have given you with the drink and the food and the nourishment and the security. Whatever you need to excel, to achieve the objective of life, Allah says, I have given you. Don't abuse it, but at the same time understand how you can maximize it so that when you come to meet me eventually on the day of judgment, you are victorious. You are an individual who has fulfilled their objective of creation. Once we understand this, what do we find? We find that this element of taqwa stands as our number one powerful supplement, so to speak, when it comes to exercising the soul. Without it, this willpower is feeble. Without it, this willpower will crumble. It needs the divine protection, guidance, and illumination. It needs to be present in the life of the human being. And that is where the power of ibadah, worship, and the remembrance of God comes in. How many times in the month of Ramadan, you and I have seen our willpower strengthen? And people often ask, why has Allah made such acts of obligation for us? I tell you, in this day and age, alhamdulillah, the mu'mineen and mu'minat here in Australia and in New Zealand, you're all in the du'as of your brothers and sisters in places such as Canada and the United Kingdom. You're all in their du'as, and also they pray that they come here as well during the month of Ramadan. Because what? Because of the lengthy fast that exists in the areas of the northern hemisphere. What do they find? That the salah or the maghrib is around 9:30, 10 o'clock. In areas of Scotland in the United Kingdom is 10:30, yes? And in some Scandinavian countries it's even more. Some people ask, but you know, this fasting is so difficult, it's so hard. Why has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it as such? Yes, it is part of the system of discipline and the strengthening of self-control. Why? Because you are presented with food, you see the water, you see people before you drinking and eating, and you don't do it yourself because you know you have to abstain from it, yes? And anything else that breaks the fasts. How many times you've been alone in the house or in your room and you're really thirsty or you're really hungry and there is some food there and you think with yourself, I will have something and no one will know. And everyone will think I'm still fasting. But the vast majority of people won't do it. Why? Because they know it will break their fast. Allah is developing that willpower within us through an assault course known as the month of Ramadan. People often ponder and ask, why has Allah made this ibadah? Of course, Allah doesn't need this ibadah. Ya ayyuhan nas, antumul fuqara'u ila Allah, wallahu huwal ghaniyyul hamid. Oh people, you are the ones in need of God. God is what? God is the creator. He is self-sufficient. He doesn't need you and I. This worship is for our own benefit. The more we recognize it, the more we approach salah and fasting and ibadah with an attitude of positivity and eagerness. Yes? How many times when it comes to salah do we find ourselves jumping for joy? Ya Allah, it's time of salah, I love it. Or is it that, oh dear, it's my time of salah, can I delay it? Oh, I have to pray, I'm not really in the mood. Yes? Rasulullah, peace and blessings be upon him, his holy progeny, would be saying that, you know, there are things in this world that I love and I enjoy. And amongst the three most things that I enjoy is salah. When it comes to the time of salah, when Bilal would be about to recite the adhan, he would say, Arihna, Ya Bilal, give me some sweet comfort. I want to hear the adhan. Why? Because Rasulullah recognizes that what? When it comes to salah, it gives us that powerful strength, that connection with Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 5 times a day, He says, I want to pump you with that energy and that fuel to be strong against temptations. Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. If we understand and we approach prayers and acts of worship with a positive mindset, believe me, brothers and sisters, it will change our lives. It will change the way we approach everything in our life. Yes? Because I tell you, how many times you and I have been told we must seek concentration in prayers. We must seek attentiveness of the heart when it comes to salah. And people struggle. People often think, how am I going to achieve it? Yes? I have had people tell me that, for example, once there was an individual who led the salah for his community. Yes? He was praying Salatul Isha. When he finished, somebody came to him and said, Maulana, Shaykhina al-Aziz. He said, yes. He said, can I ask you, I think you made a mistake in your salah. He said, why? He said, I think you performed 3 rak'ah salah instead of 4. He said, no, I'm pretty sure it was 4. He said, I have evidence, Shaykhuna. He said, what do you mean evidence? He said, I have a problem. What's your problem? That when it comes to this salah, normally I'm in charge of 4 hotels in my life. So every day in Salatul Isha, I reflect in every rak'ah how much income. This salah, I thought about 3 hotels. Where was the 4th one? Many a times, yes, our minds wander off. You think when it comes to the idea and the notion of being focused in salah, Allah is trying to somehow make it harder for us? No, it's for our own purpose. I tell you why. Because I researched and I looked at effective tools for the strengthening of willpower, and many scholars and other researchers and psychologists, you know what they say? They say meditation is very powerful. They say, why? They say, because you know the area of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, is in charge of the decision making, or the area in which decision making happens within the brain. They say studies have shown, experiments have revealed, that those who meditate, they have more grey matter in the prefrontal cortex, in the frontal lobe of the brain, yes? And they said that helps when it comes to decision making. No doubt, yes, there is great wisdom as far as these acts of worship is concerned. And how wonderful opportunity it is that when we are given these stations, such as the month of Muharram, such as the Ayyamul Aza of Sayyid al-Shuhada, Salamullahi alayhi, for us to re-examine our prayers, for us to re-look at our salah. How am I conducting my prayers? Have I looked at the fiqh? Am I committing mistakes? Imam al-Baqir says, alayhi salam, there are people who have been praying for 50 years and not a single salah of theirs is accepted. فَأَيُّ شَيْءٍ أَشَدُّ مِنْ هَذَا? Imam says, what is worse than this? Because they've committed errors and mistakes without checking their prayer with someone, without going back to the jurisprudence. Yes? This is of great importance. Similarly, have I read and examined and looked at tools to be able to benefit myself by keeping as much as possible this focus in salah? Because I know the more focused I am and more concentrating I am in salah, the more my salah will be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, no doubt, this is one of the most essential starting points for us to look at as far as discipline and self-control is concerned. Indeed, today, we have been given a number of very interesting tools. Yes, one of them is known as CAT, C-A-T. Yes, counter ambush training. What does this refer to? This refers to the idea that our temptations sometimes ambush us. You're sitting before a screen, you have your phone, and there is an inappropriate image. There is a ambushing of the thoughts. You are being under pressure. And we are told when we are in this particular position, the recommendations are to do a number of things. The first is to have awareness of what is happening in our body. There is a neurotransmitter by the name of dopamine. It's released in the body, which increases the heart rate, makes the muscles tense. It brings about the flight or fright response, yes? And that leads us to what? To be in a different state to how we normally are. That's why after fulfilling a desire that we're not supposed to do, we feel so bad about it. And we think, how did I fall into that trap? How did I get to do that? I wasn't myself. It wasn't something that I was supposed to do, yes? Similarly, we are told the other thing to do within the system of CAT, yes, counter-ambush training, is to breathe. To take deep inhalation and exhalation, yes? At the same time as breathing, we are told of great benefits of changing our setting. You know, the Prophet of Islam, Rasul al-A'zam Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, has mentioned this notion of when we are angry, and if we are standing to sit down or to lie down and to go and perform wudu, yes, when we are in situations where it's tempting, it is highly encouraged to somehow change our position of where we are, yes, and at the same time distance ourselves from the act by saying to myself, okay, no problem, in 10 minutes time I will come back and do it, no problem, 10 minutes. Just take a break, or somehow distance yourself from that act that you would like or your desire wants you to do. And gradually keep extending that duration of time until what? Until you will stop doing that. That has one recommendation. Others have said it is very important to have sufficient sleep. It is very important that the nutrition is looked after, that the food that we eat is healthy, because a healthy body brings about a healthy mind. Others have suggested that if you want a strong willpower, then you and I must be able to remove that temptations or what leads to temptations and create obstacles between us and that. What do we mean? So for example, some of us may suffer with watching TV a lot or being on social media for hours and hours end, yes? The recommendation is make it harder to be on TV. So pull the plug, yes? Hide the remote control. When it comes to the certain social media apps, delete the app. Makes it harder for you to go to that particular area, yes? Or place a timer. Anything that acts as what? Anything that acts as a barrier, number one. Number two, it is said that start with what? Simple tasks, and don't overwhelm yourselves with many objectives, because you will lose focus. You will lose direction. Many times we are told in the month of Muharram, the month of Ramadan, Hajj, Ziyarah, any opportunity, let's have positive change. Let's be better human beings. So what we think, let me go and write down the list of what is wrong with me. Focus on one thing. For example, I'm missing my prayers. For example, I am speaking ill of people. For example, God forbid, I am backbiting. Yes? For example, I'm not paying my charity or what is wajib upon me to pay. Focus on one area and try to develop that strategy to what? To improve your position as far as this area is concerned. Similarly, as human beings, we are people who are social animals. In which way? In the idea that collectively we like to do things. Experiments have shown with university students that when they were shown images and clips of other students not taking drugs, they themselves, what? They themselves would stop taking drugs. Of course, when it comes to drugs, it's haram. All of these drugs that we mention, their taking is prohibited within the religion of Islam, no doubt, yes? That's something we must remind ourselves. But when we look at others who have done it, we are encouraged too. Yes? So, to be associating ourselves with positive individuals, with those who will encapsulate us with positive energy, is of the greatest of importance. if we want to develop the irada and the willpower, to be surrounding ourselves with people who will give us support, who will give us encouragement, yes, when the going gets tough. Similarly, if we fail, we must not give up, and we should not be afraid of failure. We should not be afraid of not achieving where we want to achieve. Shaitan wants to what? Demoralize us and says, you can't do it. You'll never be able to achieve that. You'll never be able to get to that goal. It suits the shaitan to get to that, yes? Whereas we should be individuals who are very focused. If we slip, if we can't get there, we keep going. We are determined. We are people who will not indeed give up. Yes, we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to us in a hadith Qudsi, take one step towards me, I will take 10 steps towards you. He wants us to have strong willpower. He wants us to have self-control. It's good for us. It will get us to Jannah. Therefore, we must not give up. Therefore, when we say, I am too weak, I can't do it, it's no good. I've seen some brothers and sisters, they say, I really can't do it. I tried, it's just not for me. I'm not that type of person. Don't give up and keep with that effort, yes? Similarly, it is recommended to have a notebook or on your phone and have 3 lists. One says, I will, one says, I will not, and one says, I want. And write things down that what? That you constantly feel you need to challenge, and observe it and look at it again. And this is part of the system within the religion of Islam known as muhasaba, known as muraqaba, yes? Accountability and indeed what? Supervision. When it comes to certain narrations, what are we told? This is a very important tool that will help us, and it needs your attention just for a few moments. In order for us to enhance this strength and this muscle within us, we are told that in order to demonstrate the control over the nafs and to domesticate the animal within, we need to tell it we're in control. But we can't just tell it we're in control when it comes to haram. We must tell it we're in control when it comes to halal too. What do we mean? People say, what does that mean? Yes? It is the idea that the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam have presented. Once, Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi was walking in the marketplace and he saw a man selling meat. So the man looked at Amir al-Mu'mineen and said, would you like some meat? Please, here. Why don't you buy some meat? Amir al-Mu'mineen says, I don't have the money to buy it. The man says, Asbiru ala thaman. Don't worry. I will be patient. You can take it and pay me later. Do you know what the Imam said to him? Wa asbiru ala laham. And I will be patient as well. I don't want to eat meat, yes? I want to say no to my desires. It's halal, but I don't want it, right? We are told one interesting tool, not for all, some may find it helpful, and that is when it comes to things which are allowed or mubah, and the soul desires it, to say no. Be in charge. Yes. Might sound a bit strange, yes? This is a battle between you and your own desires, yes? For example, you're coming home, it's a hot day, and you want to have ice cream. Just for example. Yes, there is a desire to have ice cream. It's halal, as long as it's halal ice cream, yes? When you look at it, you think, I want to have. The desire says you want to have, and you say, no, I'm not having it. I'm not having it. Some people will say to you, why? So I don't want to have it. Now, what we are told is, if you begin to control this muscle and stretch it by saying that you're in control, when you say no at times of permissibility or mubah things, when it comes to haram, you're in a much stronger position. You're in a more powerful state. Because you've said no before. So the soul knows, don't mess with this guy. Knows what he's doing, yes? The idea is what? The idea is presented in such a manner. That's number one. Number two, of a great interest within Islamic literature is the relationship between disciplining our time and our day and willpower. In the notion that time management is deemed to be a precursor towards effective self-control. If you and I don't care about the value of time, then we're not going to be in the right position in ensuring that we get to where we want to get and our objectives are met. Because if you and I are given this news authentically, not fake news, given the news that we have been granted $84,000 every single day. But the bank says you must use it that day. If you don't, you can't roll it over to the next day. What do? We say, thank you so much. I love to see it in my bank account. It looks amazing, but that's it. Or are we going to rush to the bank, withdraw it, and use every single cent? Yes? Isn't it? We have 84,000 seconds a day. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the gift of time. Quran says, وَقِفُوهُمْ إِنَّهُمْ مَسْئُولُونَ. Every second of our lives will be held accountable on the Day of Judgment. Imam Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhim alayhi salam says, one of the greatest points of hasra, remorse for the human being on the Day of Judgment is their wasted time. Is that they look at the scroll of their life or the movie that will show all their lives and they think, wow, I wish I utilized my time better. Yes. That is something that we need to be careful of, because the moment I manage my time effectively, the moment I know every minute is greater than gold, then I know what that is, gives me a strong bedrock and a good spring to move towards disciplining how I could utilize this time and how precious it is when it comes to my life. Similarly, we are told of an effective tool, and that is the remembrance of death. This is not to place people in despair. This is not to make people scared, but it is something that works for many, yes. Because I had the personal experience, which I've mentioned before, just for people who may have not heard it. A brother came to me after one of the majalis and said, I have a problem. I said, what is the problem? He was a brother who just embraced the school of Ahl al-Bayt. And he said to me, at school in America, when I go to school, he was 17 or 18. When I go to school, there is a girl in my class. Sadly, this girl, when I see her, she comes and hugs me. What shall I do? I hug her back too. I can't really not hug her. And I can't say no to her, yes? Can you teach me a method that I say no to the hug? I said to him, yes. He said, tell me, what shall I do? I said, go to the graveyard. He said, what? I said, yeah. Go to the cemetery, Muslim cemetery, and wait and find the grave which is empty, ready for someone to be buried inside. Yes? Go inside and lie there for a few minutes. But make sure they don't cover it, right? Lie there and think. Close your eyes and think, how are you going to answer the questioning of the angels? A few days later, he came back and said, brother, I couldn't stand 1 minute inside. Yes? I was petrified. And now every time I go to class, that image is what is before me. The Quran and the teachings of the Ahl al-Bayt highlight the need for us to constantly remember death. The Prophet of Islam says, تَذَكَّرُوا هَادِمُ اللَّذَّاتِ. Mention and remember that which annihilates and destroys desires. If we are cognizant that a death can strike any moment, yes? If we are aware of this realization, then what? Then we are careful. Then we are observant of our next steps. We calculated very well. I don't know. I could be leaving in the next 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 1 hour. Could be my last hour in this world. I don't know. No one can guarantee me that I will be existing. Therefore, I should be very, very careful. Yes? And similarly, the narration tells us, رَوِّضُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ بِحُسْنِ الْخُلُقِ. Good akhlaq, mannerism, is deemed to be another powerful instruction from the Ahl al-Bayt, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhim ajma'een, to enhance willpower and to give us a great advantage with regards to the temptations of our desires and the shaitan. And indeed there are much else that we can say, but one effective means is to look at role models. And when we look at the 10th of Muharram, my God, you'll find so many wonderful examples of people who demonstrated such determination, such great will, such discipline, such eagerness to stand on the right path, yes? And after Abu Abdullah, you will not find any of his family or companions to be as resolute and as determined as Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. قمر بني هاشم سلام الله عليه. And this is a fact that has been mentioned by Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. كان عمي العباس نافذ البصيرة صلب الإيمان. Imam al-Sadiq, when he says something, it's the truth. Imam al-Sadiq says, Rahimallahu ammi al-Abbas. May Allah's mercy fall upon my uncle Abbas, because he had this vision, the basira, which was sharp, but he had strong iman. And I tell you, on the eve of the day of Ashura, Shimr ibn al-Jawshan alayhi la'a'inullah, who comes from the Bani Kilab tribe, yes, he came forward and he gave immunity to Abu Fadl and to his brothers. Abu al-Fadl Abbas was somehow embarrassed to speak to this enemy of God. Imam al-Hussein said to him, speak to him, look what he wants. And when he spoke to him, there was absolutely no hesitation. Do you know Abu al-Fadl Abbas never came back to Imam al-Hussein even to tell him that Shimr wanted to give us immunity. The moment he was presented with this opportunity to save his life, he was filled with rage and anger. And he says to Shimr, may Allah curse you and your immunity. أَتُؤَمِّنُنِي وَابْنُ بِنْتِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ لَا أَمَانَ لَهُ. You want to give me immunity, and there is no protection for the grandson of Rasulullah. Such was Abu al-Fadl Abbas. Yes, Saq al-Atasha. And one of the greatest moments of the 10th, I tell you, if you and I want inspiration from Abu al-Fadl Abbas, that moment where he felt the coldness of the water, no one would have blamed him. He had to take the water back. He had to fight the enemy, yes. But that moment of the feeling of the coldness of the water in his hands, the thirst that was killing him, wallah, if I sit here on the minbar for the next 1,000 years and talk about how it is, I will never feel what Abu al-Fadl Abbas felt. Neither will you. Under the heat of the sun in the desert in Iraq, yes, few days no water, fighting in the battlefield, having the water right next to, it is halal, it is okay, and it is needed. Yet Abu Fadl shows one of the greatest examples of a strong willpower that you and I can follow and seek as inspiration. I tell you, if we are truly the followers of Abu al-Fadl Abbas today, we make that commitment to strengthen our determination towards our wajibat, yes, and to ensure that we, as much as possible, stay away from the muharramat. If God forbid, any one of us is using illegal substances and drugs, in the name of Abu al-Fadl Abbas, we stand to repent and say, you know what, I'm going to stop. I'm going to seek help. Yes? If one of us, God forbid, is having illicit relationships with the opposite gender, in the name of Abu al-Fadl Abbas and that strong determination, I'm also going to have that strong determination to say, no, I'm not going to waste my time. I don't know what's going to happen to me. I could leave this world. Wallah, the greatest calamity is I leave this world and I can't return. And I can't then help myself. No one can then help me. What am I supposed to do? Yes. This is the challenge for you and I, as we remember the bravery, the altruism, the sacrifice, the loyalty of the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the brother of Hussein, the brother of Zainab, the uncle of Imam Zayn al-Abidin. That's why the narrations tell us that on the 10th of Muharram, Abu al-Fadl Abbas would hear the cries of the children. Al-Atash, Al-Atash. Yes. That broke his heart when he heard the children screaming, wanting water. The thirst was killing them. He would not withstand the pain of the children and hearing their agony. He came to Aba Abdullah seeking permission. He says to him, Sayyidi Aba Abdullah, allow me to go to the battlefield. Let me seek some water for the children. Imam al-Hussein would say, Akhi Aba al-Fadl, anta hamilu liwa'i. Allah. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas was the standard bearer of Imam al-Hussein, the flag bearer. Some narration says that, later Yazid was given the standard, yes? And what did he see? Yes, he saw that that there was this strong imprint on it. Yes. He asked who was the standard bearer. They told him it was Abu al-Fadl. He recognized that Abu al-Fadl would not let go of the flag. Yes, such was his valor and such was his courage. But Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas says to Imam al-Hussein, let me go, let me fight, for I can't stand to hear the cries of the children. Abu Abdullah says to him, if you then have to go, then go and ask for some water. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas goes first, asks for some water. Shimr says to him, God, by God, you will never taste the water until you fall in the chastisement of hell. Abu al-Fadl recognizes that he has to go, that he himself has to go and fetch the water. The narration says, توجه نحو العسكر. He began to fight. He killed those before him. There were around 4,000 who would stand before him and the riverbank of Al-Emaan. He reached the riverbank. وصل إلى نهر العلقمي جلس قرب الماء أحس ببرد الماء. He picked it up, yes, and he felt the coldness. Then he threw it away. يا نفس من بعد الحسين هوني وبعده لا كنت أن تكوني. هذا حسين وارد المنون وتشربين بارد المعين والله ما هذا فعال ديني. He speaks to his soul. He says, oh soul, how can you drink and Hussein is thirsty? Yes. You want to fulfill yourself and there is the cries of the thirst. By God, you will never do this. This is not part of my religion. He fulfills and fills completely the water container. Now his ambition, his desire is to go back to the campsite. He wants to feed the children. He wants to feed Ruqayya. He wants to feed Sukaina. He wants to feed the children of Abu Abdullah, the women of Hussein. His determination is such. جعل يقاتل الأعداء. He went back fighting the enemies of Allah. أجركم الله كمن له أحد الأعداء. One of the enemies stood behind a palm tree, picked up the sword and severed the right arm of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. صاح يقول والله إن قطعتم يميني إني أحامي أبدا عن ديني وعن إمام صادق يقيني نجل النبي الطاهر الأمين. By God, you sever my right, but I will continue to fight and protect the grandson of the Holy Prophet, who is truthful, who is honest, who is a man of integrity. He continues. Now he's carrying the water container and fighting with his left. But another man stands behind another palm tree and severs the left arm of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Yes, the narration says all of a sudden he cries out, all of a sudden قد قطعوا ببغيهم يساري يا نفس لا تخشي من الكفار وأبشري برحمة الجبار مع النبي السيد المختار. He speaks to his soul. He says to soul, don't worry, your right has been severed, your left has been severed, but you will be resurrected with the Prophet. وقف محتارا انهالت الأسهم تجاهه. The swords were all coming towards Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Imagine the scene, Muwaleen, brothers and sisters. Your hearts in Karbala next to Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Millions Muslims on this night are standing next to his shrine. Yes, Abu al-Fadl is standing not knowing what to do. One arrow pierces through the water container. Allah, you know, one scholar says, I think the pain of losing the water is greater for Abu al-Fadl. All he wanted was to get the water to the children. Now he realized the water is gone. Harmala looks at him. Harmala realizes Abu al-Fadl can't defend himself. There is no right and left. He says, I picked up an arrow. I shot the arrow towards the eyes of Abu al-Fadl. وصل السهام إلى عين أبي الفضل العباس. And at that moment, جاء رجل وضربه على رأسه بعمود. أبو الفضل العباس سقط إلى الأرض. He was hit with a pole on his head. He falls onto the ground. But how did Abu al-Fadl fall under the ground? He had no right and left. He has no arms to control the impact. Indeed, he fell on his face with the arrow in his eyes. رحم الله من نادى وعباسا ومظلوما. At that moment when he fell, he called out, عليك مني السلام أخي أبا عبد الله. The first time he calls his brother أخي. Imam al-Hussein leaves towards Abu al-Fadl. He cries out, الآن انكسر ظهري. الآن قلت حيلتي. الآن شمت بي عدوي. يا خويا انكسر ظهري وما اقدر اقوم. يا خويا صرت مصدر الكل الهموم. Now my back is broken. Now the enemies have the strength over me. The narration says Abu Abdullah comes next to Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Abbas can't see anything. He's on the ground. He's bleeding. Yes. Imam al-Hussein sits next to him. Abu Fadl hears someone coming next to him. He thinks he's an enemy. He calls out, Billahi alayk imhanni daqa'iq hatta yati ilayya ibn walidi. Please, I beg you, let someone come next to me. I don't want you to kill me. I want my brother to come next to me. Allahu Akbar. نظر إليه الحسين وهو مقطع الأجزاء. Hussein looks at him, but what side did Abu Abdullah see? Abu al-Fadl. سعد الله قلبك يا أبا عبد الله. قال له الحسين أنا أخوك الحسين. The narration says at that moment Imam al-Hussein wanted to pick up the body of Abu al-Fadl, but Abu al-Fadl would refuse. Imam al-Hussein would say to him, Akhi Abu al-Fadl, why would you not let me pick up your body? Abu al-Fadl says, I promised Sukaina, I promised the children water. I can't go back to the tent without any water. Akhi Hussein, leave me here. But one moment breaks the heart of every lover of Abu al-Fadl and Imam al-Hussein. That moment, Imam wanted the final moments of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas's life to be comfortable. He picked up his head and placed it on his lap, but Abu al-Fadl brings it down onto the ground. This happened 3 times. Akhi Abu al-Fadl, why are you doing this? Abu al-Fadl says, Akhi Aba Abdullah, now you place my head on your lap, but who will place your head on their lap in a few moments? Who will be next to you, Ya Hussein? Everyone was thinking of Aba Abdullah, even Abu al-Fadl, his final moments. His heart was beating Hussein. At that moment, the soul of Abbas leaves his body. He departs from this world. Imam al-Hussein رجع إلى المخيم منحني الظهر. At that moment استقبلته النساء زينب أم كلثوم سكينة and Layla. All of them looking, where is Abu al-Fadl? Where is my protector? Say Imam al-Hussein didn't say anything. Imam al-Hussein went to the tent of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. He took out the pole of Abu al-Fadl's tent. The tent collapsed. They all knew
زينب وصاحتها عباسا وشهيدا وأخا.
ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين.
Ya Abbas, with your loudest voices, Ya Abbas.